Do you have a friend who will stick by you no matter what? I am very grateful that I have a handful of friends who will stick by me no matter what. Do they always agree with me? No. Do they love me? Yes. Are they loyal, devoted, faithful, true, genuine friends? Yes. And in all the difficulties and hardships in my own life, these people have stood with me, stood by me, no matter what. Genuine, loving, loyal, devoted friends. And most people could not find three of those kind of people in their life. So what you have to ask is, why don't I have more friends? How do I develop those kind of friendships? Those kind of friendships that really satisfy. Those kind of friendships that you feel their devotion, you feel their love, you feel their acceptance, you love being in their presence. There's something anchoring in your soul about that kind of friendship. Well, that's what I want to talk about in this message, and I want us to think for just a moment about this whole idea. It is certainly God's plan for the life of every single one of us to have genuine, intimate friends. Maybe not many, but at least some. Close friends, a number of close friends. But those very, very few small group, that one or two or maybe three or maybe a few more than that, if you can do that, genuine, intimate friends. And I want to talk about what's required to do that. And when you think about those kind of friends and you think about what the Lord said when He said, it's not good for man to be alone, He intended for us to build, to develop, to establish, to have those kind of relationships to help fill up our life. Now, God certainly can make all of us, any one of us, adequate and sufficient within ourselves through Himself, but He desires not that we live as lone rangers, but that we live among friends and have friendships. For example, you can ask psychiatrists or psychologists, the people who are sitting there week after week and month after month, year after year, listening to people's heartaches and burdens and problems and all kind of counsels, and they're going to tell you one of the major problems in society today is loneliness. The fact that people do not feel closeness. They don't feel intimacy. They don't have that support. They don't have that undergirding. They don't hear that encouragement. They don't feel that love. They don't sense that acceptance. They're very lonely. They feel shut out. And the only way to feel, when you feel shut out, you also feel shut in. Now, as a result, some people have built their own walls. And so when you build a wall around you to shut other people out, remember this, you also shut yourself into a very small world. It is very important that we develop and establish wise friendships, not just any kind, but wise friendships. Now, because it's so important, because of the impact of those friends upon our life, it's very understandable that we would have to have some cautions about our friendships. And one of those cautions is this. We have to be careful about who we choose as our friends. We have to be very careful who we choose as our friends. Now, that's true of all of us, and you who are parents, how many times when your teenagers were growing up, you had to say to them, or you probably did say to them, you know what, now I want you to have good friends, but so-and-so bothers me. You as a mother or father could see in the personality or in the conduct or the behavior of your son or daughters or their friends something about one or two of them that you didn't like. Now your son or daughter said, well, why don't you like them? You don't like them because of what they wear, and you don't like them because of the music they have, and you don't like them listen. And so you know what? You couldn't really tell them exactly why. Something inside of you sent you a bad message. And because you want your son or daughter not to be wrongly influenced by someone, you wanted them to be wise in choosing their friendships. Well, the same thing is true of adults. We need to be wise in choosing our friends, because they're going to have an impact on our life. So we have to be wise in the choice of our friends. Do you have any kind of set of standards or convictions that are important to you, so important that they govern who you choose as your friends? Or if someone comes along and see, we have the idea today oftentimes that in order to really have friendships, you've got to find somebody who is somebody. In other words, somebody who's this, that, or the other. You know what the issue is? What is that person on the inside? What is your gauge for determining the kind of friend that you want? So the first caution is we have to be wise in choosing who our friends are. The second caution is this. We have to be wise in choosing how we form that friendship. That is, how do we form this friendship? Now, friendships are formed in all different ways. Sometimes people meet each other, and that friendship is based on the fact that two people are lonely. And all of a sudden, they meet. And they begin to talk, and they develop some kind of relationship that goes on and on and on. And it's interesting sometimes, and oftentimes when I walk into a restaurant, I will slip into the bar and just look around, see what I see. It's supposed to be the happy hour. I don't see a lot of happiness going on, but that's what it's supposed to be. And you'll see men and women sitting there talking to each other, and I wonder oftentimes how many of them met right there. They met over a drink. They met over their loneliness, and so their relationship began in a bar, drinking, trying to sort of at least numb some of that loneliness by something to drink. And so that's the way their relationship and their friendship started. That's not the best place in the world to begin one. That certainly isn't the best way to do it. That's probably not going to be a wise relationship. Probably won't end up right. Probably end up in disappointment and disillusionment and hurt and pain. We have to be wise about, wise about who the friends are and wise about how we carry out that fellowship and that friendship. For example, if that friendship is based on some need that you have, then more than likely it'll head out in the wrong direction. So we have to be wise about who we choose as our friends and how we develop that friendship. What is the basis of that friendship? What's the governing principles? This is how we choose and govern our friendship. For example, I want you to look, if you will, in the 15th chapter of 1 Corinthians, because here is a very solemn warning, and every parent should say this to their children and say it loud and clear. And you may have to say it 1 time, 10 times, 100 times. But this is a principle and a warning that I believe God gives us here in this 15th chapter of 1 Corinthians. And look, if you will, very short verse, the 33rd verse says, "Do not be deceived, bad company corrupts good morals." Look at that. Do not be deceived, bad company corrupts good morals. That is, a person who is immoral or has very low ethical standards, or who has very little standard at all, and whose behavior and conduct is not what it ought to be, he says, don't be deceived. Now, why does he say don't be deceived? Because many people have said, well, you know, I know that he is not a Christian or she's not a Christian, but they're good people. Or, now I know that my boyfriend is not a Christian, he didn't go to church, he's not been baptized, but, and I want to tell you, young lady, young man, when you say but, what you have just confessed is there's something wrong with this, Dad or Mom. I don't want to admit it, but something's wrong. He says, listen, do not be deceived. Don't let the devil deceive you into thinking that you can fellowship with, that you can build a relationship with someone who is corrupted in their nature and it not affect you, because our friendships, and I'm going to show you in a few moments, have a tremendous impact upon our life. And this is why a person who grows up in a home where they have a godly father and mother and they have godly standards, they will raise godly children most of the time. I'm not going to say that's always the case every single time, but for the most part, they're going to raise godly sons and daughters who have such a good self-image themselves that they're going to be able to develop and establish good relationships and build godly fellowships with other people. When that is not the case, people have to deal with that. They have to learn, look at themselves and find out what is missing and why do I feel shut out and why do I feel rejected and why don't I feel loved, and finally they come to grips with themselves. Then they're able to build those kind of relationships. But he says don't be deceived. He says bad company corrupts good morals. Here's what he said. He didn't say it might. He didn't say it's possible. He didn't say it could. He didn't say it had. He said bad company corrupts good morals. That is, you can't have an intimate, close relationship with somebody who is corrupted in their nature and come out very well. Those kind of relationships don't last, and they cause a lot of pain, a lot of heartache, a lot of disappointment. So, I say all that to say we must be wise in choosing our friendships. And the warning is be careful who you choose as a friend, the reason you choose them as a friend, and what kind of fellowship and what kind of friendships you formulate with that person. Now, they're going to have a tremendous impact upon our life. And so I want you to think about the kind of impact those relationships have, and because I think a lot of times we think, well, you know, they just don't think the way I think, but that's not going to affect me. Oh, yes, it is. Because listen, the more the two of you become one in your thinking, so often, most of the time, the one who is corrupted seems to corrupt the other rather than being a strong influence and changing the other person's life. And I think this is what people have to think about when they get married. And you say, I would never tell anybody what to do about their marriage. You ought to, you should not. I have an opinion, and I have some biblical basis for doing so. But today, you tell somebody you shouldn't marry that guy, they'll just run right out and do it to prove they can. I mean, it's crazy what people do. But listen to what he says. He says, bad company. That is, you have to decide what is bad company. And the question is, bad company is anything that would draw me away from the living God whom I love and choose to serve and to whom all of us desire to please.